The current conflict: airstrikes and retaliation. Israel has launched numerous airstrikes targeting Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. These strikes are in response to intelligence reports of an imminent rocket attack planned by Hezbollah against Israel. The situation marks a dangerous escalation in the long-standing conflict between the two adversaries. Hezbollah, in retaliation to the Israeli airstrikes, has fired rockets into Israeli territory. These rockets have caused damage, sparked wildfires, and forced the evacuation of Israeli civilians living near the border. This exchange of fire represents one of the most serious escalations in recent years. The Israeli military claims to have destroyed a significant number of Hezbollah rocket launchers and weapons depots. They argue that these strikes are necessary to prevent future attacks on Israeli citizens. Hezbollah, meanwhile, vows to continue its resistance against what it views as Israeli aggression. The situation remains extremely tense, with the possibility of further escalation looming large. Both sides are digging in, and the risk of a wider conflict is a growing concern for the international community. The roots of the conflict: a history of violence. The current conflict between Israel and Hezbollah is the latest chapter in a long and bloody struggle. The two sides have been locked in a cycle of violence for decades, fueled by deep-seated animosity and mistrust. Hezbollah, a Shiite militant group and political party based in Lebanon, emerged in the 1980s during the Lebanese Civil War. Backed by Iran, Hezbollah is committed to the destruction of Israel and has been labeled a terrorist organization by many countries, including the United States. Israel views Hezbollah as a major threat to its security and has repeatedly clashed with the group over the years. In 2006, a month-long war erupted between Israel and Hezbollah, resulting in significant casualties and destruction on both sides. The underlying issues that drive the conflict remain unresolved. These include disputes over land, resources, and the very existence of Israel. Without a political solution, the cycle of violence seems destined to continue. The world reacts, calls for restraint and de-escalation. The international community has reacted with alarm to the escalating violence between Israel and Hezbollah. Governments and organizations around the world are urging both sides to show restraint and prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. The United States, a close ally of Israel, has expressed concern over the violence and called for de-escalation. However, the U.S. has also reiterated its support for Israel's right to defend itself against attacks. The European Union has also called for an end to the hostilities, urging both sides to respect international law and protect civilians. The EU has emphasized the need for a negotiated solution to the conflict. The United Nations has condemned the violence and called for an immediate ceasefire. The UN Security Council is meeting to discuss the situation, but it remains unclear whether any concrete action will be taken. Section 4. A dangerous path: the risks of further escalation. The current situation carries with it the very real risk of a wider conflict. If the fighting continues to escalate, it could draw in other regional actors, such as Iran and Syria, transforming a localized conflict into a regional war. Hezbollah possesses a vast arsenal of rockets and missiles, some of which are capable of striking deep inside Israel. An all-out war would likely result in significant casualties and destruction on both sides. A wider conflict would also have devastating humanitarian consequences. Millions of civilians in Israel and Lebanon would be at risk of displacement, injury, and death. The region's already fragile economy would be further crippled. The international community must work urgently to prevent further escalation and find a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Failure to do so could have catastrophic consequences for the entire region. Section 5. The human cost: suffering on both sides. Lost in the headlines about military strikes and political posturing is the human cost of the conflict. On both sides of the border, ordinary people are bearing the brunt of the violence. In Israel, families are living in fear of rocket attacks, forced to seek shelter in bomb shelters. Schools and businesses have been closed, disrupting daily life and spreading anxiety. In Lebanon, the situation is even more dire. Israeli airstrikes have killed and injured civilians, including children. Homes and infrastructure have been damaged or destroyed, leaving people displaced and desperate. The conflict is exacerbating an already dire humanitarian crisis in Lebanon. The country is grappling with a severe economic collapse, and the violence is only making things worse. Hospitals are overwhelmed and essential supplies are running low. It is imperative that the international community prioritizes the protection of civilians and provides humanitarian assistance to those affected by the violence. The suffering of innocent people must be brought to an end. Section 6. A plea for peace, the only way forward. The current cycle of violence between Israel and Hezbollah is a tragedy for all involved. It is a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the urgent need for peaceful solutions. The international community must redouble its efforts to mediate between the two sides and find a lasting resolution to the conflict. This will require addressing the root causes of the conflict, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and finding a way for Israel and Hezbollah to coexist peacefully. Dialogue, diplomacy, and compromise are the only way forward. The alternative is continued violence, suffering, and instability, with potentially catastrophic consequences for the entire region. A peaceful future for Israel, Lebanon, and the Middle East is possible, but it will require courage, leadership, and a commitment to peace from all sides. The time to act is now, before it is too late.